All right, welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of a 2-part tutorial series on Smart Animate. We're looking at how to become a pro at Smart Animate, straight from the basics up until how to really use masks and movement to create an engaging presentation. So if that sounds interesting, subscribe to this channel and make sure you check out this tutorial. For those of you who just joined and haven't seen part 1, we've looked at how to use position, size, and opacity to make things appear and disappear and move around with Smart Animate. Today we're looking at how to use masks to really make pro animations in Figma. So without any further waiting, let's take a look at our screen and what we have on screen today. So you can download this file in the description below. There's a link for this very file that you can duplicate and play with. So let's look at the final product for part 2 of this tutorial. All right. So let's take a look one more time to just dissect what's going on up here. So we go all the way back. First, you'll see that there's a shrinking of this image into a circle, kind of like this photo turns into an avatar. Okay. And then what else do you see? If you take a closer look at the text, it appears in an interesting way. It's almost like it's sliding from the side, but also appearing at the same time. And take a look at the text that appears right underneath this. So you'd say it appears from the bottom, but it doesn't go all the way at the bottom of the screen. And you might be understanding what we're going to go through today by looking at this. And then next you'll see that the avatar shrinks into, well, it doesn't really shrink, but shifts into a profile photo there in an interface. So this is really interesting when you're doing a presentation where you're starting from something abstract and then you have to drop it into the UI. All right, there we go. And there's a bunch of other things happening at the same time. Some things fade in, some things have cool animations like this. Like, look at where it comes from. All right, there's like a oval effect to it where it appears from as a circle and then it expands all the way. Then it shifts to the side and there's stuff appearing on the side. And then everything else fades in. Pretty simple, the last part. Everything else, once you get the hang of it, it's actually very easy, but it looks professional. It looks nice. So let's go back to the start and let's get through the tutorial part of this. All right, so our first slide has the photo of this woman. So we're gonna take this and you'll see it's just straight up a photo, very simple. We just drop it into the frame and adjust it to the top of the frame so that her face is kind of centered. We can work with that. So from here, we start by what you would do intuitively. And for me, I would have this slide, great. Then let me figure out what my next slide is. So I Command D to duplicate. I figure out that I'm gonna need this to be smaller. So I can just make it smaller, but I also want it to be in the shape of a circle. So let's put it down here. Yeah, her face doesn't need to be too small. So I'm just gonna go ahead and select O for oval, goes right about the center of her face. I hold Option and Shift to make it start from the center and be symmetrical. I kind of want to cut it out like this. And right now, as you see, it's just an ellipsis on top of a PNG. But I would just want to actually put this below and make this a mask. I want her face to be a little bit more centered in this. Make sure that the ellipsis is actually centered with the screen. Perfect. So I think this is good enough for us. So I'll just take these two, hit Command G to group them, and here we have a group. So let's take a look first to see if anything breaks now if I prototype it with Smart Animate. So I just connect the two screens, make it Smart Animate, ease in and out, and I'm gonna leave the time as it is. When I click, yeah, it's kind of a fade. You see it's just fading out and then this one fades in. What we want to do is we need to replicate the layer structure of our destination also here. So we've learned by copying this that we actually want it to be in a group and with a mask. So there are multiple ways you can go and create stuff. I just go for the easiest, which is, I know it seems counterintuitive, but I just go in, select the image, delete it from my first frame, if I can do it, okay? I just copy this, paste it in the first frame so that I'm 100% sure that Figma recognizes this as the exact same group. And so now what you do is you want the animation to be like from the outside, zooming in into a circle. So how do you do that? You make the mask, the ellipses, bigger than the screen. So I'm just gonna go like this. I'm always holding shift to make sure. And I wanna make sure that all the edges are included. I'm not gonna be super picky whether this is centered or not, doesn't really matter. And then this photo, I need it to be full screen. So just make sure that I selected this and not the group. And I just go always holding shift to keep proportions. In photos it's not too big of a deal, but because it rearranges it, but you go like this. And now if we've done everything correctly and play it, this should actually work. So let's try to give it a click. All right. It's kind of slow because my computer is trying to do a lot of things at the same time, but that's it. So we've done the first one. And we're gonna actually use this method for basically everything else in the prototype. So follow me through this. Grab the title here, just like this, paste it inside, and just go here, random placement. If I do this, this just appears. It's just there, fades in. There's no cool anything. I first want it to appear from the side. So I wanna create a rectangle here that in this case is going to make everything inside it visible. All right. So like with the ellipses, I'm going to put it on top of the whole text, group it with the text. And then since masks need to be at the bottom and anything that is within that mask shows up, I'm going to put it here at the bottom and mark it as a mask. If I change the mask to be like this, you see that it doesn't show. We're going to take this group that we just created, copy it, paste it in our first frame, and we don't want it to show like this. So we're gonna take the mask and shrink it down like this. And let's take a look at what this does. So to make it a little bit more interesting, I also want the text in the first, you'll see that it highlights the same text because it recognizes it. I want the text to also shift down below a little bit and see what happens. Let's see. Oh, it's starting to show up a little bit more nicely. It sort of all comes together. All right, sort of all comes to the top. Now I'm gonna go a little faster because the second one is pretty much the same thing. I'm just gonna duplicate this frame. And then in this frame, I wanna have a subtitle for Patricia. So let's go with this. Software engineer. Let's go here. Random placement again, don't worry about it. I want to do the same thing with the mask where I want this to appear, let's see, like this, and then put it below, group it, Command G to group it. Let's make sure we see what we're doing. So expand all the things, use as mask, and let's make it a little smaller. So actually I'm gonna make it way smaller. Not too much because we want it to showing up a little bit. And again, for the same principle, I want this to be connected to the frame before, but in the frame before, I don't want the word to show up. So I'm gonna take my mask, shrink it down, and take my text and move it down a little bit. Now I haven't connected these two frames yet, so let me just do that now. Let's just drag from here, way easier. Smart Animate. Actually, have I made everything 150? No, let's just do 300. Okay, so now if I hit R to reload, let's see if it's doing what we want it to do. All right, it is showing up nicely. You see, like it's showing up horizontally, but it's also showing up from the bottom. If I don't want it to be that obvious that it's showing up from the bottom, I can always reduce the size of the mask to be like a little bit more narrow. Oh, wrong. I need to select the actual mask and not the group. Make it a little bit more narrow. Try to do the same here. Try to do the same here and see if it's a little bit less obvious. There we go. I want to again duplicate the frame, even if it looks a lot different. Let's duplicate this and make sure that we only delete the things that we need to delete. I don't care about this resizing. It's too complicated for what I'm trying to do. So I'll just focus on this staying the same and moving to an avatar. So I'll just shift it down here. And then we have a situation where we have a rectangle kind of doing the role of a header. Let's see, let's do something nice like this and then put it in the back. To put it in the back, you just do command square bracket open, square bracket close, puts it on top, open puts it below. So I just want it to be at the bottom of the frame. To use as reference to know which size of things I need, I'm just gonna copy all of the UI that I need. So I'm gonna need this thing here. I already made it the right color, so you're not gonna need to adjust much. You just drop it in, place it where you see fit. And what I want to do is this thing to be inside there. So I'm just gonna Command X to cut it. Select while clicking Command so that I go to the very bottom of this UI. You see I just drill down the layers on the rectangle. Paste to paste it on top of it. And then, okay, so please bear with me. This is where I realized that I'm doing the same mistake that I did actually a few weeks ago when I was doing this at work, where I realized that this doesn't actually shift inside there nicely because I can't put it inside another group to show up nicely. And I'm like, okay, I just changed the mask to have, instead of 100 whatever corner radius, to 0. And then I realized that I actually used an ellipsis. And that's where I realized that I have to redo, that I have to change the mask shape in all of this. So I'm just gonna show you how it's done and I'm gonna fast forward. I'm basically gonna put a square instead of an ellipsis, give it 100 corner radius and apply it everywhere. Apologies. All right, after having fixed my prototype, let's see if it works. Now let's try to do the thing that I was trying to do. So I want to have this here, right on top. I want it to be slightly smaller, maybe, just the right size to fit the square. So I need to zoom in and go really precise with the size. Yeah, I think I'm there. And then I don't want this ellipsis to show up, so I'll just change, since this is a property of my rectangle, I can change it back to 0 and Figma will animate that from a circle to the square. So if I've done everything right, it now should do something. Let's see. All right, there's something happening there. It's working. So in order to make it a little smoother, we need to apply a couple more masks. So I don't want this, for example, to just be there already when the image transitions. I want this to show up through a mask as well. So what I'm gonna do, same exact as before, I'm gonna just deselect, create a rectangle around it. And I want it to appear from the bottom corner right here all the way to the top. So I want it to show and appear from the bottom. So I'm just gonna drop it inside this info bucket and at the bottom of it. So let's just go here, make sure it's all in there. Yeah, it's inside. I'm gonna make it a mask. All right. Let's see, use as mask. Great. And with masks, you've seen that what needs to happen is that this info thing needs to exist in the previous screen as well. So now that it has a mask, I'm just gonna copy it, drop it in frame 3, don't panic. I'm just gonna take the mask, go down to a little corner. Make sure that nothing shows up. Great. And now let's see what goes on when we animate this. Ready? All right. This is kind of cool. It's not perfect. I would probably want to do something different, but it's pretty close. Like, you could play with it, play with the timing and the size of the mask and figure out what works for you. But we've gone through so much already in this tutorial, so let's finish it up. Next to appear is a map. As usual, I'm just gonna Command D, duplicate this, and go find my map component. There we go. Copy it. It's kind of a big map, so we'll see how it shows up. But I want it to be kind of large. It's a frame, so I'm just gonna expand it and then move this along. I mean, ideally this would move on its own, but make this somewhat realistic with San Francisco in the center. And then just align this somewhere. Union Square, perfect. So what I want to happen is I want this to start appearing from the center of this pin. So how do I do that? Same old method, click O for ellipses, and this time ellipses should work because I don't need it to change shape. So ellipses, go this there, and then I hold Option and Shift to make it grow symmetrically. Great. Let me actually, yeah. So from here, I see that the ellipses is inside this frame, and frames kind of work like masks because you can select a frame and say clip content in it, which is great. I just want the map inside the frame to show up inside the ellipses. So what I need to do is make this a mask as well. So let's try and copy this, the whole frame, paste it inside this frame. And once we're here, take this ellipses mask, go with Option and Shift all the way down to the center. Great. But now you're going to say, well, this kind of still shows up. I don't want it to show up like this in the previous one. Well, you'd be right. I don't want it either. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that this whole frame has 0% opacity and see what it is. That technically means that this will both expand the ellipses, the mask, and turn the opacity from 0 to 100. Let's see what we're doing. Okay, you see, this is kind of nice. It fades in, but it also expands out. So that's great. We're gonna apply just one last thing, and then you're done. Then this is the end of it. The last thing that what I want to do is I want this map to shift to the side to let other information come in. So as usual, Command D to duplicate. Given that this is a frame, if I had put, yeah, like it does something automatically, so that's fine. We're gonna make it shorter. The pin can stay there, that's cool. I'm just gonna Command select the image, hold Shift and start moving. While I'm moving, I'm holding spacebar so that the image doesn't fall out of the frame the moment that my cursor goes outside of this little square. Okay, so there we go. My material, gonna take this nice square, select this and then Command V, actually select this and Command V in there. This box already has a spot for our map, like an empty spot. Let's go and make sure that we make it nice and clean. And actually we need it to be a little bigger, so let's just expand this out. Okay, so this will now fade in. Let's again give it a little bit of a boost, and let's make it appear from the corner like the other square did. So let's see, connect the frames and see if it works. Okay, from here, all right. There's some stuff happening. It's because this is not all masked within one thing. Because this is a frame, so let's group it with this and make the rectangle mask a mask for the whole group. What I did is I just shifted it out. So I'm just gonna try to do the same here. I'm gonna take this, take the little group that we had, actually make it back once so that they match. Group these two together and then take this mask. Okay, it's working. So you still see it a bit if you look, but maybe that's okay. I think we're pretty much done. And I'm gonna add a bunch more information and have that show just to complete the screen, really. I don't care how it shows up. It's probably not gonna show up with any animation. I'm just gonna place it, make this aligned with the other one. Let's just make this large, just like the other one. And it's pretty much all we've done. So let's take a look at our final complete tutorial. So let's try. And nicely blends in. Then the second one comes in. This kind of cute. And then there you go. They just fade in. And with this and all of the stuff that we've done today, this concludes part 2 of our tutorial. You can consider yourself a pro at Smart Animate. This is it. And if you've appreciated this tutorial, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel because there's going to be more coming. Last bit, if you see me in this setup and it's kind of different from usual, this is my living room, and that's because my shooting room is full of luggages. I'm packing. I'm going to be out of the States for 2 months. Finally seeing my family. I'm really excited for it, but I'll keep the content coming. So make sure you stay tuned and I'll see you at the next one.